Welcome to Sector Spotlight, a production of AGORACOM, in which we talk to CEOs and executives of small caps companies in notable sectors that you can potentially profit from. Today, we're going to be discussing the small cap medical marijuana space. I'm happy to have with us Chris Bunka. He's CEO, President, and Chairman of Lexaria Corp. Trades in Canada under LXX, trades in the U.S. under LXRP. Also with us, as always, AGORACOM Chief Market Commentator Allan Laboucan, who's going to put Chris to a bit of a test with his analysis. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, George. Real happy to be here as always.
Yeah, thanks a lot, George. And with the emerging industry of medical marijuana and hemp, I'm really interested in learning more myself. So this is a bit of an education for me too, George.
All right, Chris, let's start off. I wanted to, before we talk about Lexaria a little later on, I want to talk about some real great sector information first. Let's talk about what I'm calling .com. A lot like .com, we had that big run-up, a lot of fever, a lot of excitement, and now we've had this massive rundown and a lot of deflating of people's views. What happened in this first phase here?
It's a great analogy, actually, George. And yeah, we had a huge run-up in the spring of 2014, late winter, and it subsided. So it tells you a couple of things. One, it tells you that there's an audience out there that is very, very anxious to embrace new sectors and new investment opportunities. And so obviously medical marijuana was perceived to be that sector. And that's why everything in the sector ran so high so fast. And then it came down. Well, why did it come down? It came down for a number of reasons. I think there's two main ones. One, people realized, as they usually do over time, that it takes time to build a business. You don't just turn a switch, flip a switch, and all of a sudden you're doing $20 million in revenue next week. It always takes time. And so that probably disappointed them a little bit to make that realization. And then number two, obviously, Health Canada has been doing a very thorough job, and they're probably very much understaffed to deal with the onslaught of roughly 1,000 medical marijuana license applications. They've been expecting 50 or 100, I do not know. But certainly a very large number of applications that probably they weren't ready for. And they're trying to do a good job of vetting all of the applicants, and that just takes time. So again, delays in getting to the finish line, we're just not there yet. And it's going to take time for investors to realize that, companies like Lexaria and the others, they're just going to need more time to execute our business plan.
What excites me about that, George, is that I've seen this before in other sectors when a lot of hot money goes into a space, right? And one of my biggest successes in the past has been waiting for that hot money to go in, just get smacked around, and then it turns into cold money. And I like looking at these things when the hot money's left the market, and now you go looking, and what I've always done is go looking for the serious companies. Everybody and their dog tries to get in and attract the hot money. It's the ones that are real businesses that are actually doing the real business stuff while all the hot money is in there and they're focusing their attention on the real business. That excites me about this. I'm glad that hot money is gone. I think that the medical marijuana, the hemp opportunities are very long term. And so, we got to look at the real ones, and this is a way to sort of cull the herd, if you will.
All right, Chris. So what came, the good news out of .com or .bomb was the advent of Web 2.0, because companies, investors had to recalibrate a little bit, account for a little more reality, and then we just had, we all know what's happened to Web 2.0 and all these great companies, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, you name it, right? So what are we looking for in the medical marijuana companies that are going to succeed in Pot 2.0, that are going to make it rise out of this and be the big market leaders over the next 5 years?
That's I think that's a really important question, and so I'm kind of going to answer more as just an individual than I am as the chairman of Lexaria. I don't want to be biased, but I see it as 3 tiers in the market. So you have, at least in Canada, you have the first tier, which is the public companies like Tweed, Laboucan, Organigrow, who are both already public and already financed, and they have a license to grow. So they're clearly the market leaders. And the market is rewarding them. I haven't checked the last few days, but generally speaking, I think the market is rewarding them with market caps of, say, $60 to maybe $100 million, somewhere in that range. So they're perceived to be the leaders. They have revenue, and they're conducting their business. That first tier is very, very small, certainly less than, say, 6 or 8 companies. Then you've got a second tier. And in the second tier, you have quite a number of companies. I would argue maybe as many as a couple of 100. Those couple of 100 companies have maybe any one, or in some cases even 2 of those 3 assets. They might be public, or they might be financed, or they might be neither of those, but they have a license. I would consider that Lexaria, for example, is in that second tier. We are public, we have some money, we've raised some money, we have more money, we have an oil field, so we have some assets, we have some longevity. Those companies, I think, are where investors need to be selecting their targets. And you need to be looking at all the things you would expect. Management, financial ability to withstand a long process. This is not going to be over in 3 months. Allan made the comment about the long term, and boy, you're so right. Most of the companies that are waiting on licenses today, chances are we will not have them until 2015. So do you have the financial staying power to be around in 2015? And George, you made the comment about, who are the serious players? We've hired a number of consultants. We spend a lot of money with our joint venture partner, Intertopia, for Burlington, Ontario. We have a fantastic, I have to give a lot of credit to Robert McAllister, the president of Intertopia. We've got a fantastic relationship with Health Canada. We speak to them regularly, every week or maybe every 10 days, with questions that go back and forth. We found Health to be really responsive and very good to work with. If you're an investor, ask your company CEO, when's the last time you talked to Health Canada? And if they say it's been 3 months, ask them why. Why is that? Why are you not conversing with these people?
Well, why is Lexaria getting every 7 to 10 days? So what is it about Lexaria and a couple of other companies that that have the attention of the government?
I think what it is from our point of view is we're certainly not. We're very anxious to get our license. Our license application is underway, and we're talking to Health Canada regularly to ask them questions. And so we phone them or email them, and we ask them, hey, if we did this, how would you view that? Or in response to a question that you might have, Health Canada, if we gave you this answer, is that going to fulfill your need? So we're not skulking around in the basement or anything. We're trying to work very closely with them, and we're pretty serious about our application. Then you've got a third tier of companies, and in my own opinion, those companies are not worthy of investigation. So these are going to be companies that really don't have any of those 3 attributes, neither a license, nor any financing, nor are they public.
So these are the pretenders. These are the pretenders put up press releases and say, George's Gold Company or AGORACOM suddenly wants to get into the medical marijuana business. We're trying to ride the coattails via press release, but not bringing any substance to the table.
Quite literally wannabes. We want to be something, but we're not there. And quite frankly, I do a lot. The world knows I do a lot of angel investing and so on. And as an investor, I'm never interested in those kinds of companies because wannabes are all over the place. It's easy to have an idea. Implementation of ideas is really difficult.
So with all the applications in, It's how many are in? 1,000, 10,000? What's the number?
1,000, just over 1,000.
You know, what if 1,000 companies were all of a sudden got their license? What would that do to the supply side?
Well, I believe there are roughly 1,000 applications in, plus or minus. Kind of going through my own criteria that I just discussed. I think of those 1,000, I think there's maybe up to a maximum of 300 or so that have any realistic possibility of getting a license, because I don't believe the rest of them will meet the criteria. Health Canada has been very clear on one issue, and it's even at their website. If you go to the frequently asked questions on the Health Canada website and you look, they have a question there that says, is there any cap or any limit on the number of licenses that will be awarded? And the answer is no. There is no limitation on the maximum number of licenses. So I applaud the Government of Canada for not making it a government-controlled industry. It is up to the free market, just as it is in .com, internet, Facebook, social media, whatever you want. It's not up to the government to decide who's going to win and lose. It's up to us as corporations to outcompete each other and be the best.
Okay.
Market. Let's talk about market size for a second, and then I want to get into the state of things in Canada and the U.S. We've heard the numbers before. In Canada, this could be a $1.3 billion industry. Allan and I were talking about this off camera with you before we started the interview, that at least Allan and I think that number is significantly understated. And I brought the example of an uncle of mine, very old, very Greek, immigrant years ago, so straight and narrow, who unfortunately now is better, but was going through chemotherapy, and they were looking into medical marijuana and help alleviate the side effects of chemotherapy. And that told me, and I've got a couple other examples, but I don't want to bore everybody, but those outlier examples, that tells me that if you remove the stigma, as Allan had mentioned earlier off camera, if you remove the stigma and medical marijuana becomes accepted, is there a chance that this completely grows exponentially further than anything any of us in the public expected? And have you, Chris, maybe taken a look at any numbers like that to get a better feel for what this market really could be?
Well, we've really examined the data, and people who know me know I'm that way. I'm a bit of a data junkie. And so before we steered our company from oil and gas to medical marijuana, we really looked at it hard. And the reality is that you're exactly right. The potential for this market is possibly at least one and possibly two orders of magnitude larger than we are perceiving. I'm 53 years old. I don't use marijuana, never have no desire to, but it doesn't mean that I don't recognize now that I've investigated that the need, not just the desire, but the need for it is very real. So when you look at the Health Canada numbers, for example, that are published, they talk about, 45,000 or so registered patients at one point for the medical marijuana program in Canada. That's a number you can take to the bank. That's very conservative, solid, it's there.
Right.
There's a number of studies and reports, some anecdotal, some published in newspapers and so on, that suggest, now I need to be clear here, the medical need in Canada is actually about 10 times larger than that. So that's one order of magnitude. And you say, well, why is that? And the response is that a lot of people who do need to use it for medical purposes are still embarrassed. They might be a little bit ashamed. They might not want their neighbor to know or anybody to know, and so they do not register. And they still buy the drug illicitly. And that's kind of sad if you think about it. Then the point number two is, when you're talking about market scope, is if that is in fact true, every study that's ever come out always agrees within some sort of range of error that the recreational market, which is presently not legal in Canada, but the recreational market is some 10 times larger than the medical market. So then I have to pose the question, are we talking, is it 10 times larger than 45,000? or is it 10 times larger than 450,000? And that is a hell of a question. So that's how I come in and I say, well, look, the actual market that we could be talking about down the road, if some of the, if the Liberal Party gets into power and they legalize it for recreational use, you could be talking theoretically about over 4 million users or customers of this drug in Canada compared to the 45,000.
That's only 15% of the population, and when you look at the vast amount of things that medical marijuana can help, 10% sounds like or 10-15% sounds like a pretty reasonable number. I think there's still a big stigma out there that that people have about marijuana, and as the aging baby boomers get a little bit older, they were the ones who were experimenting more in the 60s. As time goes on, that stigma gets less and less, and I think what really amplifies that stigma getting less and less is when you start hearing stories about that young girl who had hundreds of seizures per day, and it just pulls at your heartstrings. And not only does it pull at your heartstrings, but I also think it pulls at your brain, and you start to say, well, if I have glaucoma, or I have, pain from back problems, or all these various different things that can be helped by medical marijuana, I think that people start to get more, and if they make it legal, I think that is the kiddie bar the door. Now you've opened the floodgates. People are, now it's not illegal anymore, right? So now people can say, what's different than you having a drink, right? And now people say nothing. It's not illegal, anything.
And let's not forget about another trend, guys. And Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but over the last few years, there's been a rising pushback to pharmaceutical solutions, for lack of a better phrase, which is people are starting to realize that they don't want to be hooked on these pharmaceuticals, these synthetically created pharma products that my children, when we watch, if we're watching NFL football and you get a pharmaceutical commercial come on, they absolutely laugh out loud at, and I'm sure we all do, at that little disclaimer, may cause boom, boom, boom. They go through 15 things, and they say with a smiley face, they say, but, contact George and you can get this drug. And so that also may be working in the favor, and I think will work in the favor of medical marijuana, as people say, hey, maybe I'm not going to go the pharmaceutical route just yet. Let me try something a little more natural. Chris, I don't know if you've seen anything anecdotal that lends to that or not.
Well, it can be a difficult subject for me to talk about because I've got some first-hand experience with that. So, George, you've known me for 10 years or more, I don't know. And, I had a big accident some years ago, and it was a difficult time for me, and they had to kind of rebuild my upper body. And so they put me on morphine and OxyContin and all sorts of different things. I had a half a dozen surgeries over a 2-year period as my arms were put back together. And,
there we go.
Non kind of abusive person. I don't have the personality that I like to use drugs or alcohol. But I had a hard time with the cocktail of drugs that was fed to me. Now, I never used medical marijuana either. I quit cold turkey, and it was one of the hardest things I ever did. Since then, that experience was one of the formative experiences in my life that led me to accepting that I needed to look at getting into this business, because I know firsthand that even people who are well-meaning can get sucked into the morass of these pharmaceutical drugs, especially the morphine and those opiate-based drugs. Since that conversation, as you should hope I would have had, with many, many healthcare professionals and doctors, and so many of them will say to me something like this. I'll just paraphrase. They'll say, Chris, I'm not really a big fan of medical marijuana. I'm really just not. Having said that, I think it is less than the opiates that I prescribe every day to people. Therefore, I'm more inclined to prescribe medical marijuana. So, you know, when you have doctors actually saying, I think it's less bad than the things that we're using every day, I think that's a huge, you know, the pharma business is a big business. It's a multi-billion dollar business. There's nothing wrong with looking for alternatives, and medical marijuana works for a lot of people and usually has no side effects. And that's a huge thing. It will not cause your heart to stop. It will not give you that 15 list of side effects. It's going to do harm. So I think it needs, and it's very justified, and as a society, we need to explore medical marijuana and find out once and for all how much good can you really do at this point.
You know, it's not just medical marijuana either. I'm First Nations, and my grandfather, you know, he was the last of those that went to the medicine man, and you know, when he was dying of cancer, they told him he had 6 months left. He went and got a concoction that he ended up living for another 20 years. Wow. You know, there's a lot of plant-based, and we've been using them as First Nations people in Canada to medicate ourselves for 10,000 plus years. There's a lot of solutions like that we just don't look as much into. I often think that if I had gone to my grandfather and said all of the things that medical marijuana can do for you, and then told him, but you can't do it, it's illegal right now, my grandfather would look at me like I was from another planet. It's a plant. It helps. It makes a big difference for a lot of people.
And don't forget, I was just going to say that, and for any healthcare people that are watching, forgive my ignorance because I'm not a doctor, but I've been told that cannabinoid receptors in the human body are among the most common receptors in human cells that there are. So your body is ready to receive, and I'm not talking about THC and the psychoactive component of marijuana, I'm talking about the cannabinoids, which do not have a psychoactive component. Those compounds are willingly absorbed by your body. I do not know, I do not have anywhere near enough knowledge to know why that is.
Let's switch gears here, and let's go into the ending segment of our interview, and let's talk about Lexaria specifically. What's happening with Lexaria, Chris? Where are you guys, first of all, on the medical marijuana side of things? Where are you guys in the process? What kind of things are you up to? And then I also want you to end off with, you put out some pretty great news today about another oil well and more oil, barrels per day being produced, which is great because it provides a foundation for Lexaria and its investors as opposed to having to constantly go to the market. So give us that update so everyone at home knows what's going on with you.
Fair enough. Well, of course, I'd like to think, right? Having said that, we are not the front runner at this point. We just are not. And I'll tell you that we are working hard to become that, and I want to take that position on. So in Burlington, Ontario, we've got our joint venture with Anatopia. That's sort of our front runner program, if you will, in the medical marijuana. We are conversing with Health Canada, as I've mentioned, on a regular basis. That is ongoing. Our consultants, which would be our security people, our QA people, our production people, are going through all the steps we need to in order to hopefully receive a ready-to-build letter from Health Canada as soon as possible. My hope, this is not a projection, don't take it that way, my hope is that we do have a ready-to-build letter. If we do have that, I have already had a score of meetings with financial institutions across Canada, and we have been assured that what I would call construction-based financing will be very readily available to us once we have that ready-to-build letter. Meanwhile, yeah, you mentioned the oil well and stuff. We have revenue coming into our company every day from our legacy business, which was oil and gas. So we have that oil field down in Mississippi. It helps to cover part of our burn rate every month, not all of it, but part of it. And today we put out news on a brand new well, a 12-7 well, and it's a wonderful well. We're really, really happy about it. It's producing 120 barrels a day. despite the fact that it's a very shallow well. It's only 3,000 feet deep, which is shallow in the oil biz. And despite the fact, so if you can imagine, think of an HB pencil. We all know what a pencil is. We've all drawn pictures, or our kids use a pencil when they go to school. That pencil is a little bit larger than the straw well right now. So if you can imagine that tiny little straw, it's very restrictive, very narrow tube, and out of that little straw we have 120 barrels, which would be, I don't know, 6,000 gallons a day of oil coming through that straw. Telling you how much power that oil through. So we're being very responsible. That's the way we operate our business, always has been. We're producing the well on a very restricted choke, a very narrow tube, if you will, and that extra cash flow will help us run the business. We've also had a number of calls with people who are interested in our oil field in its entirety, and we'll see where that goes as well. That might give us a cash boost as well. So we're doing well. You know, the application is in. We're looking at other properties. We want to.
That brings up something for me, Chris, as an analyst. You know, how do I value the company? Do I look at it as we've got two disparate businesses there, and what kind of valuation do I put on the oil production relative to the potential of the medical marijuana? Are you guys I would think that that can confuse your audience sometimes.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And here we are. We're sitting at, we have around 34 million shares outstanding. So the last time I looked today, we were trading around 11 cents. So for the sake of conversation, let's say we have a $4 million market cap. Our oil field says that our interest net of all operating expenses and capital expenditure, our net interest in that field is worth $6 million. So we're trading at a discount to our net value of the field. I think that's...
So the company's getting really no value for the medical marijuana side.
Right, exactly. So we're being given zero valuation for the medical marijuana, and as I said, if we get a license, I think there's three that are public and licensed, and their minimum market cap, I believe, is $50 or $60 million. So that tells you what the market might value us at if we deliver a license. So your job as investors is to decide, can Bunka and his team pull it off? Can they get a license into the company? Because if they can, there's big upside. If they cannot, then the company's properly valued.
And I think that's a great place to leave it right there. It's almost like a cliffhanger with, we should put to be continued right across the banner when this is done. But Chris, thanks for an amazing sector spotlight. You brought some fantastic, what I love about it is you brought some fantastic information to the table that was well beyond what we all read in the headlines out there. So thanks for that. And also great for you to update us on Lexaria. I love the fact that you have the oil well business, that you never let it go, you never forgot your roots, and that's there helping you so that you don't have to go to the market. And we know what can happen to small cap companies when we have to go to the market for money every 6 months. So congratulations on where you've gotten to this point. We're all going to be sitting, waiting, and watching to see if and hopefully when you get your license approved, and then we're going to have you back on to discuss next steps from that point. So thanks so much, and congratulations on where you've brought the company so far.
Thanks, George. I love being here, and I'm pretty confident we're going to get that license. I look you in the eye. We're going to get that license onward and upward.
Allan, thanks for the great commentary, great analyst point of view of things, and we'll see you on the weekly show later this week.
Yeah, no problem, George, and I really appreciate Chris. Also, you gave me a bit of an education that I'm wanting to learn more about this, and I'm kind of the cold money investor too. I'm not interested in chasing after hot things. I like to look at when they're cold and that there's good things coming down the road, and that there's good people running the show that are well informed, trying to push the company in that direction. So I really appreciate you giving me an education.
Fantastic. Happy to be here.
You've been watching Chris Bunka. He's CEO, President, and Chairman of Lexaria Corp. Trades in Canada on the stock symbol LXX. And for our friends in the U.S., trades on the stock symbol LXRP. Hope you enjoyed this sector spotlight. Make sure to share this with everybody in your network. Get the word out about great medical marijuana information and fantastic information about Lexaria Corp specifically. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.